Kia ora. This is a short video text for our institutional investors that are looking at what we're doing with our project, our project in the frontier and emerging markets. It's all aligned to our vision. Our vision is to preserve the future for our children and for our children's children, both indigenous and non-indigenous. So I'm talking to our institutional investors that are environmentally friendly, child friendly and indigenous friendly. Now if that doesn't suit you, please just delete this text. It's of no value to you. But if it is of value to you and you institutional investors, share our vision for the children. You know that we've got to do our project that we're doing throughout the frontier and emerging markets, which is sustainable economies that we're building, and we're utilising, it's about population decentralisation, which is getting the decent, good-hearted people, finding them and getting them out of the conventional towns and cities relocated into the beautiful, pristine wilderness areas on the lands of the indigenous peoples, as joint venture projects using engineered transmigration, where we bring them out, hundreds of millions we'll be bringing out of these conventional towns and cities, which are fossil fuel and automobile dependent infrastructure projects, which are going to implode on themselves in the next 12 months as the peak oil crisis hits. And there's 5 unsolvable threats to humanity, and that's climate change. We're on the verge of runaway climate change. Just check out what happened with Hurricane Irma. And then we have also the peak oil, or the petroleum crisis 2020, and that's only 12 months away. And then behind that we have the global food shortages, mass population displacement, and then behind that we have the global food shortages, and behind the whole lot we have the Rothschild's vision to depopulate humanity by 6 billion people. If you're not a Jew, that includes you, your wife and your family and your friends. So they're a long way to achieving it. They've come a long way. It's going to unfortunately happen. There's nothing we can do about it except the population decentralisation and relocating the people, using the engineered transmigration and being able to rapidly mass produce sustainable villages, or what we call debt-free, zero-emission, green infrastructure projects, which are sustainable villages and sustainable cities. Now the difference between our projects, infrastructure projects, is that we don't use any fossil fuels and we don't use any automobiles. So that's got rid of all the automobile infrastructure, from tunnels, roads, highways, freeways, suburban roads, you know, the rural transport corridors. We don't use any of them because we use the main rivers, the large rivers, as the transport infrastructure, and then we move away from the river using monorail systems running in figure-8 formation away from the river and then adjacent to the river, and then we put compact communities on the monorail system. But to put the monorail system in place, we use high precision GPS, where we go through the bush, we dig out an area, we use geopolymer, it's an alternative cement with zero emissions, and then we put in the bolts for the pylons for the monorail system, and then the heavy lift helicopters come in, they drop the pylons into position, and then they hook up the monorail system in the figure-8 formations. Now, once the monorail system's in place, we then have our teams of environmental scientists go in and they survey an area about the size of a footy field, and they conduct our feasibility study, environmental impact study, and then they also capture and relocate the wildlife, everything from little lizards to rabbits, and you know, and the marsupials. Capture them, relocate them to another part of the forest so they're happy in their new homes, make sure their homes are right, and that's good. And then once that's done, we clear fell that area of the footy oval, and then we put in use our rapid building construction technologies. We've got rid of all the trades. We only need the electrician and the plumber, because the panels that we have, thin and very, very strong, and we go upwards. We have all the wiring and the plumbing is actually in the panels, so when we go floor to floor we just have couplings, link them up, we go up. We use also the panels for the scaffolding. We got rid of all the trades, and therefore we're able to get rid of or reduce the to zero emission, zero waste as well. So this is how it works, and we can build in a pristine tropical forest with less than 1% impact on the natural environment. So that's where we come from. Very popular. We're able to raise a phenomenal amount of money to build these precincts as debt-free, zero-emission green infrastructure projects. This is the future for humanity. We must decentralise the populations, finding only the good-hearted, decent people, bringing them out, putting them to these beautiful upmarket precincts, and we've got to build them fast enough to bring the people out in a time before all these conventional towns and cities implode upon themselves. What's going to happen, right? So we're dealing with the infrastructure, to build the infrastructure for our children and our children's children, both indigenous and non-indigenous, for the future. They'll be relocated into these precincts along with their parents, grandparents and their siblings that qualify, doing the heavy training curriculum that we have as a qualifying thing. Now, so that's handling the infrastructure for tomorrow's children, but we've still got the problem with the climate change. Professor Peter Newman asked me to write him a document on how to reduce the consumption of humanity and raping and pillaging the planet of minerals and petroleum resources. And I said, yeah, no sweat, I'll write that. So I've written that for him, and Peter's #1 in the world for sustainability, by the way. And so I wrote that document for him. I'm also a sustainability expert as well, but I'm indigenous, he's non-indigenous. But we've worked together on 3 different projects. I've done 14 sustainability projects, and I've created 5 new industries, unique industries. We've launched 2, 3 more launched to stabilise our climate system. And how we're doing that to stabilise the climate system is we're working in association with the Bible prophecies, and there's a Bible prophecy written for our time period at Revelation 11 verse 18 that says God will bring to ruin those ruining the earth. And I want to share with you how he's going to do it, because he didn't create this planet for these greedy rich to ruin, and these politicians and these damn religions. He could bring them all to ruin. And this is how, part of how he's doing it. Check this out. We're sending you a document here at the top there, you see right there, that's the link. Check that link. Read this, it's only 2 pages. Check that link, you will find how our almighty creator is bringing them to ruin. And you'll be blown away. In the first part of that video, it talks about the organisation that is going to do it. It is the world's first invisible and indestructible dark network, right? There's nothing ever been written about it. The media won't publish anything about it because their families will be kidnapped, or the editor, the CEO and the media mogul who owns it. There will be a coalition of gangs that will come and kidnap their families and process them through a treatment centre, which you can learn about on this on one of the videos. But that is the organisation that is going to bring to ruin those ruin the earth. And the way they're doing it is they're going to conduct fly-in, fly-out attacks on, here in Australia. They've already positioned, using high precision GPS, they've already positioned the drop saws out in the wilderness areas beside the railway tracks. And they've had a video created where the indigenous people came in doing their dance on the actual tracks, and then witch doctor putting a curse on the tracks. And then behind that is these Maori warriors coming and doing the haka, right? And the Maoris are coming to sort it out. Now when the Maoris do the haka, behind them there's a bloke wearing a mask, and he's got the drop saw, he's the one cutting up the tracks, and then behind that are the Maori rappers from the Maori gangs that are freestyle rapping the indecencies of going through the sacred sites with these railway tracks, and also about the issues about this Rothschild's vision that's on this particular podcast and who was responsible for the 9/11 attacks. So all that's on the podcast. It's going to blow you away. Watch that and we'll take you to the next step after that. But here's the question. This FBG organisation, the Invisible and Indestructible Dark Network, has thousands of criminal organisations coming behind them now, from terrorist organisations to outlaw motorcycle gangs to street gangs, from the Killer Bees, the Bloods and Crips, all coming behind. You'll see them all download their videos onto our website when it goes live. Now these are going to, their goal is to cut up every railway track on the planet that carries coal. Figure that one out. So when they cut up all the railway tracks here in Australia, I'm standing outside the BHP Billiton building right here in St George's Terrace. Upstairs here is the control room for the railway train controllers. It's all controlled from here. There are no train drivers on those trains. Now, the FBG have said they're cutting up every railway track in Australia owned by Rio Tinto. If you've got investments in Rio Tinto or BHP Billiton, you need to get out, you need to sell up and get out, because they're cutting up all those railway tracks all around the world owned by Rio Tinto and BHP Billiton, and the objective is to bankrupt the Rothschilds and their $500 trillion, bankrupt them, and they're bankrupting the Eastern Asia as well economies, because they're harbouring the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds don't have any financial assets in America anymore. The RIT Capital Partners moved all their, and the Bank of International Settlements have moved all their financial assets out of America. It's going to implode upon itself. Harry Dent spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. I was at his seminar and I talked to Harry afterwards. So it's all happening, but Harry predicted that actual domino crash of the global financial system is going to happen in 12 months, but he's actually wrong. This is the only prediction he's got wrong. Every other prediction he's right, because he did not know this prophecy, and he did not know that the Maoris on the warpath, and the Maoris are cutting up all those railway tracks. Now, as I said, I'm standing outside the BHP Billiton building, and just upstairs here we got the train controllers. Right there's, and you see, about 10 days ago there was that derailment. If you check it out on YouTube, a derailment of the BHP train carrying iron ore with 250 carriages. It derailed. They derailed it on purpose. They said it was a runaway train, and they had to derail it because it was going to end up in the port and wreck everything. But the truth of the matter is, folks, there was no train driver. They hyped up this fantastic story that the driver pulled in at a stop, and then the train took off by itself. But you know, don't be a rocket scientist to figure this one out. If you've got 250 carriages, you need at least 2 locomotives in the front. You need 1 or 2 at the back to push the darn thing to get it started. It's really, really heavy. So there's no way it took off. It left the driver behind because there wasn't even a driver, right? And if there was a driver, a man on a walking stick could have caught that train. It would take a long time to start moving it. It takes about 10-20 miles to bring it to stop. It's that big. So that's a lie. That was the first lie. There is no train driver. It's up here, and the FBG know where they're located. They're not going to bomb it. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to stop those trains, take out these families at the train controllers. There's another one also out in Midland. The reason we know is we're Maoris, and they've got Maori train controllers. We've had a little chat with those boys. They've told us how it all works, right? So we know where they are. The FBG also know where they are. So either they stop the trains from this end by taking out the train controllers, or they simply cut up the railway tracks. But everything's prepared to cut the railway tracks up. That was all porkies with that that fantastic video you see on YouTube about, you know, the train is all crashed and mangled. They deliberately derailed it, which is a lie, right? They said that the train got to speeds of 120 kilometres an hour. Now that's another lie. Here in Perth, if you've ever been on our metro rail system on a hot day, they slow the trains right down to about 30k because all the railway lines are warped. Now up in the Pilbara, it's well over 50 degrees up there sometimes, so there's no way that train was travelling at 120 kilometres an hour with without derailing. It would certainly derail with that much weight on it. So it's another porky, it's another lie. They never got up to those speeds, and they certainly didn't derail it. And I don't know of any railway company that has a facility for derailing the trains. And there's another lie. So they're a bunch of lies, the masters of deception. They had to do a cover-up on this because the reality of it, folks, was, I got the word from the underworld, right? Because we got the underworld on our side. The FBG has 10% of our company that the Rothschilds seized our corporate bank account after they found out about our project in the frontier and emerging markets, which Winston Peters, a dog, gave to them. He passed on the information that I sent through to the New Zealand government, asking them to bring our Maori Nation behind us for these construction projects throughout the frontier and emerging markets. But he forwarded on to the Rothschilds. Within a week, the Rothschilds seized our corporate bank account for the Indigenous Peoples Learning Network, which is will enable us to bring or enable the Indigenous Peoples revolution to rise to power. But how can that happen if the Rothschilds cut up our if the Rothschilds seized our corporate bank account and they looted my other two bank accounts, private bank accounts, in another bank. So this is what they did in response to stop us from doing these projects in the frontier and emerging markets, which we don't use any fossil fuels and we don't use any automobile infrastructure. So we're in direct opposition to them. We also don't use any funding, we don't need it. They're debt-free, zero-emission green infrastructure projects. So the central banks don't like that idea, and we're using a decentralised, cryptocurrency-based, sustainable financial system. And it's not Bitcoin, by the way, that's a trap, and it's not Litecoin or Ethereum. We've got our own, we've got 5 to drive the systems. So that's all good. But going back to what I'm talking about these railway lines, when the FBG cut up all the railway lines across Australia, that's going to hold. Australia supplies 30% of the world's coal, 59 billion a year, into particularly Eastern Asia for all the power plants that manufacture aluminium and steel, right? The blast furnaces and whatnot, but they're not going to be able to do that because there's going to be no coal, right? And there's also going to be no exports coming out of Australia. So you institutional investors that have investments in the Rio Tinto and BHP Billiton, you need to sell up and get the heck out of it. It's going to cause a domino crash of the global financial system in accord with that prophecy to bring to ruin the earth. If you look at 30% of the world's electricity production is from dirty coal from Australia, that's going to there's going to be none going into East Asia, so they can't manufacture anything made from aluminium and steel. Just for starters, when the railway lines are cut up across Australia, there's no iron ore going out there either, or aluminium bauxite. Now, as a demonstration that the Maoris are serious about this and they're going to do it, just have a listen to this podcast and see whether these Maoris actually can do it or not in this criminal organisation, invisible and indestructible. So that was a porky about the runaway train. It sounded really good, but it was a lie. I've just given you 3 reasons why it was a lie, and they had to do that, hype it up for the media, because the reality, folks, is it was cut up. It didn't get derailed by the these mobs. No, they don't have any drivers on those trains. It got cut up by the underworld here in Australia, who are linked to the FBG that you're going to learn about on this particular podcast right there. And they're cutting up the lot. So it's going to cause the domino crash of the global monetary system. Australia's going to lose $1 trillion overnight as the stock markets crash, because if you take out 30% of the electricity production out of Asia, how are they going to supply baseload electricity even to the local populations, right? So they're going to have brownouts and blackouts everywhere. But the worst hit is going to be is that they're not going to produce any aluminium and steel. There goes your automobile industries. There goes anything made from steel, folks, from these big drilling platforms made from steel, railway lines, and there goes all your construction industries down the tubes, right? So it's going to domino crash the global financial system before Harry Deed's prediction, which was 12 months away, but we're talking a couple of months away. But you need to find out first. You see, basically we have two types of people. We have the ignorant. So they're going to ignore what I'm saying. And then you end up starving to death by living in these conventional towns and cities. And then you have the informed, right? They're the ones that are listening to me right now. You listen to this podcast. You stay in contact with us. We will, if we trust you, we'll tell you the cryptocurrencies to invest in. When the system crashes, the cryptocurrencies will rise in value. And believe you me, any of the other cryptos, about 1100, they have no value unless you've got an entire system from the raw materials through to the first tier, second tier supply chains and distribution all around the world using manufactured direct distribution of products around the world. And so this has all been organised. We've been 30 years on this project, by the way, folks. So look, this is there's going to be an announcement by this notorious criminal called Mick Jagger. He's going to announce this here. Have a look at that. That is World War III, WW3CC, and you're going to see thousands of these gangsters with their gang leaders holding this up and saying, we're with the FBG, we'll do whatever it takes to destroy the Rothschilds. And you wait till you hear what they're going to do, man. That's scary stuff. As you notice, it says there, us versus them. That's the Rothschilds and their secret societies versus humanity. And it is, by the way, there you can see it's a dirty war. It's a dirty war. By cutting up the railway tracks, they're going to do all sorts of things to destroy the Rothschilds empire. The Rothschilds are financing all the fossil fuel industries, and they're deliberately accelerating climate change to use climate change as a weapon of mass destruction to starve humanity to death. 6 billion of us. Folks, if you're not a Jew, that includes you, your wife, and your children and your grandchildren. Check out that podcast, stay in contact with us, and if you share our vision, you prove it to us that you're indigenous friendly, child friendly and environmentally friendly. We'll let you know what cryptocurrencies to invest in. We'll let you know 24 hours before the official announcement and declaration of World War III, climate change. www3cc.com, it'll be on there.